Welcome back to a new season of 3 true scary stories told by the Spooky Moose. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Now, let's light the campfire. A couple summers back, a few friends and I went on a camping trip to northern Pennsylvania. It was a 6-hour drive from where we lived to where we would be camping, nestled right in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I had driven through this part of the state before, but never camped. So naturally, I was very excited that I would get to explore the area. We arrived Friday afternoon and set up camp. Our site had great views due to the elevation, and we hiked out a few miles that day. Later on that night, we had many beers and just chilled around the campfire. I was having a great time, and there wasn't much more I could ask for. Saturday, after we woke up and ate breakfast, we went swimming in a waterfall that we had came across on our hike the day before. Later on that day, when we got back to the campsite, I found that my cooler, which had all of our drinks, was missing. It was a very expensive Yeti cooler that I was already apprehensive about bringing in the first place, so I was super upset. We looked around the site, but obviously it wasn't there, so we accepted our fate. The site that we chose was very isolated, so I found it weird that someone would come in and steal, but you never know, I guess. My buddy had whiskey in his truck, so that night we drank and speculated around the fire. Before I went to lay down, I walked a few feet into the woods to take a leak. As I was standing there doing my business, I thought I saw something move in the distance out in front of me. I heard a few twigs snap on the forest floor, which alarmed me even more, causing me to jump back a bit. I stared in that direction intently, but whatever I thought I saw, it was not there anymore. Half drunk, I laughed it off and put the blame on a forest critter of some sort. And after I lay down, I soon forgot about the occurrence in the woods, and before you know it, I was fast asleep. Unfortunately, that would not last long. I woke up to a faint noise, like a ripping of fabric. My eyes slowly adjusted as I looked around the tent while still laying down. Everything seemed to look normal. And just as I was about to chalk it up to a dream I was having, I heard the noise again. This time more alert, my eyes darted right to the direction where I heard the noise. I could not believe what I was seeing. There was a pocket knife blade poking through my tent, slowly cutting down towards the ground. I sat there frozen in fear, as a glimpse of a person's face came into view as the slice grew down the backside of my tent. It was a deranged-looking man with dark, intense eyes. When he caught me staring back at him, he stopped momentarily. A weird smirk came across his face. Then he continued to cut through the remainder of my tent. I jumped up, yelling for my boys to wake up. I unzipped the tent enough for me to dive through as the madman jumped into the tent where I just was laying. My friend John brought his shotgun and emerged from his tent, holding it, yelling, "What's going on?" The man emerged from my tent unbothered by the pandemonium. John chambered his shotgun and pointed it at the man. Let's just say he made a convincing statement on why he should leave. The man turned and slowly walked back into the woods. My tent was ruined and my cooler was gone, and I was almost murdered. But needless to say, I was ready to leave. We packed up our stuff seeing that it was already 4:30 a.m. and just rolled out early. We stopped for breakfast a little later and recounted what had just went down. I remember being super relieved when I got home that morning, because even though we made light of the situation, that was almost my last camping trip. I like to think of myself as a rugged outdoorsman, for lack of better terms, but that's the best way to describe what I am into. Camping in off-grid locations for days, sometimes weeks, elk and deer hunting annually, and even traveling to other continents to see what the wilds there have to offer. But the story that I speak of today happened in my lovely home state of Alaska. After a busy stint at work, I decided to take the upcoming weekend to do a bit of primitive camping. Bare essentials only and on public land, to sum it up for you. No campsite, no fees, no annoying campers. I couldn't wait. The weekend came and I set off on my trip. As you can imagine, a lot of the state is already super remote, so it doesn't take long for you to end up somewhere that looks like a place you would see on the back of a postcard. After arriving at what I thought to be a nice spot, I parked my truck, gathered my things, and hiked about 3 miles west off the road to a spot where I felt comfortable pitching my tent for the night. My plan was to hike another few miles in the next day, then pack up and hike all the way back to my truck on Sunday. Things did not go exactly as planned. I awoke that night to the sounds of engines revving nearby, sounding like a dirt bike or maybe a quad. It startled me because there was no trails nearby and it was also 1 a.m. Whoever was out there was getting closer by the second. Then it went quiet. Whoever was on those things had cut the engines. I couldn't hear anything now. The dense pine forest floor was silent for whoever walked on it. The next sound I heard was clearer than any other that night. The sound of someone chambering their rifle echoed through the night. I just lied there motionless, waiting to hear the sound of a boom before it went dark for me forever. Instead, I heard a man with a deep voice say, "Come out of the tent." Hesitant, I slowly came out of the tent with my hands in the air. I slowly turned to my left to face him. That's when I saw it was actually 2 men standing there. One older, maybe in his 50s or 60s, one younger, maybe in his early 20s. I told them that I didn't mean any harm and that I was just camping, minding my own business. The older gentleman stared at me as I spoke, as if judging every word carefully. He told me that I was in fact on private land, his private land, and that I should vacate the premises immediately. I told him that I had thought otherwise and showed him the app that I used to determine these things when I went camping. He seen that this portion of his property was in fact listed as public land. But the other man still had his rifle aimed at my chest, so I wasn't going to argue with him. I just wanted him to know that it was an honest mistake. He walked a bit closer to me to see what I was referring to, and after confirming, he finally lowered his weapon. He introduced himself properly, and we sat there and had a civil conversation for a few minutes. He said I could stay the night, but I would have to head out in the morning. I agreed, and they went on their way. Apparently, word that a precious metal had been found on this gentleman's property. He kept coming across mining sites on his land and had run into a host of sketchy characters. After hearing a few of his stories, I sat up half the night, super keen on every sound around me. At first light, I packed up my things and started heading back to my truck. I felt so much relief on my drive home, mostly because I set out for a relaxing weekend away from it all and almost got mixed up in some stuff that was way over my head. That night after I got home, the fire pit in the backyard had never been so appealing. This is a story I rarely share because of how traumatizing this situation was to my family and I, but it has been some years and now I would like to come forth with my testimony. To all my fellow Scary Story listeners, my name is Eric and at this time I am 46. I have a beautiful family that I love dearly, consisting of my wife, my daughter, my son, and my black lab Spade. This story takes place about 10 years ago when they were both still little kids. I have always loved the outdoors and have went on countless camping trips all across the world. When I met my wife, I took her with me on many adventures, and when our kids were born, they would soon join in on the fun. The summer of 2014, we were all set to go on our favorite camping trip to a campground about 2 hours north of our home in Northern California. This was our favorite place to go at the start of the summer. I remember packing up the truck and leaving that day, not knowing what my family and I were heading into. We got to the campground with plenty of daylight left. After we checked in, we went to our lot and began to set up camp. My daughter was 14 at the time and my son was 11. They both had plenty of experience, so with all four of us, we were set up in no time. We hung out that day by the water, and that night we had a great dinner that was cooked over an open fire. After a while of hanging around the fire, we all began to get sleepy and decided to turn in for the night. Let's say I drunk one too many beers and I was knocked out before I knew it. I woke up at 2 a.m. and needed to pee really bad. I slipped on my sandals and crawled out of the tent. My wife was sound asleep. She didn't move a muscle. I ran a few meters into the woods behind my campsite to relieve myself. I didn't want to wake anyone. As I sat there, taking what felt like the longest whiz of my life, I heard something moving in the brush not far from where I was standing. I immediately froze up, not knowing whether I should run or keep still. The noise was getting closer and closer, so I decided to snap out of it and hightail it back to my tent. In hindsight, that may not have been the best thing to do because I was putting my family in danger, but at the time, that was the first thing that came to mind. Once I broke forward, I heard the brush behind me rattle and whisk with aggression. Scared to look back, I just kept running as fast as I could towards the tent. When I made it to the tent, I glanced back in the faint moonlight, and I could make out a giant cougar coming up right behind me. I dove back into the tent fast and zipped it up. All the commotion startled my wife, causing her to scream loudly. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it through the little mesh window of the tent. I couldn't see anything outside. It had been silent up to that point, with my wife asking me 3 times what was going on before I finally mustered the courage to answer. I pointed my flashlight over to the kids' tent to make sure they were okay. I told my wife what I just saw, and she went pale in the face. She called my daughter on her cell phone and told them to get up. I slowly unzipped the tent to go back outside and check and see if the coast was clear. There was no sign of the cougar, but for safe measure, we decided to sleep in my truck for the rest of the night. It was a big expedition and it had plenty of space, so it wasn't that bad. The next morning, we went to the office and notified the park ranger that a giant mountain lion was roaming around the campsites, which they seemed very concerned about. Being that it was the start of summer, it was a very busy weekend there. Someone being eaten by a mountain lion would not have been good for business. They offered to move us to a nicer lot right off of the water, and we obliged. We stayed the rest of that weekend and didn't have any more encounters. I'm just happy that night, me and my family weren't on the menu. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of 3 True Scary Stories. Please take this time to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll meet you all again by the campfire.